This is a Candy Factory Mini. So you want to write a book? With Suzette Mullen.
Hello, I'm Suzette Mullen, book coach, nonfiction writer, and your host. Welcome to So You Want to Write a Book. My goal is to break down the challenging process of finding and getting clear on your story so you can finally take action on the book that's been rattling around your head or tugging at your heart. Even if you never plan to write a book, I'll share tips that will help you become a more informed reader and a more effective writer in your work life. Questions? Email them to me at hello@yourstoryfinder.com or feel free to comment in the post and I'll get back to you. So for now, grab a pen and paper or your phone or your laptop to jot down some notes and let's get started. The other day, I was listening to a podcast where an editor from one of the big 5 publishing houses said this: "I'm looking for books that are both completely unique and exactly the same." And she laughed, but she meant it. She was serious. Let's unpack what that means for someone who's considering writing a self-help or how-to book, what we collectively call prescriptive nonfiction. So let's talk about that unique part first. Maybe you've asked yourself, how unique does my self-help book need to be? Well, I did a Google search the other day for this exact question, and I came up with almost 5 billion results. So clearly, this is a question on a lot of people's minds. This question's actually deeper than it appears on the surface. Let's say you're a parent and a pediatrician who has an idea for a book on child rearing. Now, there's likely hundreds of books on the same subject. I know when I was raising my kids, I had a bunch of them on my bedside table. What you're really wondering about when you ask how unique does my book need to be is, do I have anything new or worthwhile to say on the subject? Or has it all been said before? So the first thing I want to say is that's a really important question to ask yourself. Do I have anything new or worthwhile to say? Because if you don't, I think you have your answer right there. If your book's been written by someone else, you don't need to write it again. But let's get real. I'm guessing you do have something worth saying, a fresh perspective or a unique angle that adds to the bigger conversation on the subject. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't be plagued by this idea that nags you, that won't leave you alone. So this worrying that you don't have anything to say is more likely imposter syndrome. Maybe you're finding it difficult to raise your voice or claim your authority on the subject. We'll dig more deeply into imposter syndrome in another episode, but for now, let's just put that to the side. So back to our child rearing book idea. Maybe you found a new method to get your child to sleep through the night. That's your unique or fresh angle on child rearing, and more specifically on the subject of how do you get children to sleep so you can actually sleep too. Can you even imagine how many sleep-deprived parents would want to buy this book? Now, if you're worried that sleep-deprived parents have all the sleep books they need, let me put your mind at ease. People who have a problem will buy many books on the same subject. They keep buying until their problem is solved or their curiosity is satisfied. Case in point, last year I became kind of obsessed with the idea of money mindset, both in my personal and my professional life. And it seemed that the universe kept bringing more and more books to my attention on the subject. So I bought them, and I bought them, and I bought them, and I bought them. You Are a Badass at Making Money, Wired for Wealth, The Soul of Money, It's Not Your Money. Each one of these books had something to do with money mindset, but they approached the subject from a different angle. And I'll probably buy some more, keep looking for another perspective, another angle, until I'm ready to move on to another subject, or I've had my question or my problem satisfied. So I've done the same thing this year with books on racism, like many of you may have. I started reading White Fragility. That was the first book I tackled, and that's by a white woman author. And I'm about to start reading So You Want to Talk About Race, which is by a black woman author. Two very different perspectives on racism, two unique takes on the subject. Now, as a writer and a book coach, I can never have too many books on writing. So these are just a few that I pulled off my bookshelf, and they're some of my favorites. Still Writing by Dani Shapiro, Anne Lamont's Bird by Bird. This is a classic. The Writing Life by Annie Dillard, Writing from the Body by John Lee, The Right to Write by Julia Cameron, and my newest book on the subject, Stephen King on Writing. Now, I've even been thinking about writing a writing book myself. And believe me, I'm going through the same exercises I'm telling you about today. What unique perspective can I bring on the craft of writing? And believe me, like many of you, I'm experiencing a bit of imposter syndrome. Who am I to write a book on writing when Stephen King may have already said it all? So go ahead and look on your bookshelf and see if you've bought multiple books on the same subject, just like I've been doing. Understand your own book buying mindset, and you'll better understand what your readers will be when it comes to buying your book. So that's the unique part we've covered. Your book needs to add something to the conversation on the subject you're writing about. But what about the other part the editor said, that I'm looking for books that are exactly the same part? What did she mean by that? So I think what she means is that the agent or editor or publisher, and ultimately the reader, needs to know where your book fits into the marketplace. If your book is only unique and not exactly the same, the uniqueness becomes a problem because people don't know what kind of book this is. If there aren't other books out there that are similar to your book, that's actually not a good thing. The agent or editor or publisher doesn't know how it can sell your book, because if it can't categorize it or put it in a box or compare it to other books that it's sold. And even if you self-publish, you're going to have the same problem. Amazon needs to know what box or boxes to put your book into as well. And your reader needs to know that and where to look. So take the books I just discussed. They are easy to characterize. Writing books, books on racism, books on money mindset. I had a friend recently who said she was looking for books on money mindset. It was easy for me to just grab those books off my shelf and lend them to her. I didn't have to examine the titles and wonder, is this a money mindset book or not? You want your book to be the same way. You don't want people to be asking what kind of book this is and they don't understand. The Child Rearing Sleep book is an easy example too. Plug in How to Get Your Child to Sleep on Amazon and you'll see parenting relationships as the top category. You'll also see a bunch of books about kids and sleeping, which, remember, is a good thing. It means there's this problem that a lot of people have, and they're buying a lot of books to try to solve it. But as an aspiring author on the subject, seeing those books might intimidate you. Hello, imposter syndrome again, which brings us full circle. What do you have to add to the conversation? How is your book unique? Now, if you're planning to traditionally publish your self-help or how-to book, you'll be preparing a book proposal, which is a document that's essentially a marketing plan for your book. And one section of the proposal is called competitive titles, which you'll often hear referred to as comp titles. The comp titles section of your proposal is exactly what we've been talking about. How is your book exactly the same? You're going to show there are other books out there on the same subject that readers are actually buying. And how is your book completely unique? You're going to show in the book proposal how your book adds to the conversation. And whether or not you actually draft a book proposal, getting a handle on your comp titles is a good way when you begin to think about and plan your book. How do you find those comp titles? It's easy. Go ahead and plug in some keywords into Amazon and see what comes up. Read the description of the book or take a peek inside to get an indication of the angle or point of view of that book. And see how it's like your idea and see how it's different. You can do the same exercise strolling through a brick and mortar bookstore. Do both if you can. So let me leave you with this. Your self-help or how-to book does need to be completely unique and exactly the same. One without the other is not going to cut it. It needs to add something new to the conversation, and it needs to be easily categorized. Do this deep thinking, this exercise, once you've solidified your idea and before you've written your book. It's one of the critical parts of your planning process, and one that I spend a lot of time on with the writers I coach. If you get this right, you'll be ready to write a book that makes a difference in people's lives and a book that people will buy. If you've enjoyed these tips and would like to hear some more, please go to yourstoryfinder.com and sign up for my newsletter. It is chock full of tips to help writers get started, get unstuck, and get their stories out into the world. Next time we're talking about memoir and uniqueness again. How unique does your memoir need to be? Are you worried about whether the world needs to read another cancer, abuse, addiction, or you fill in the blank story? We'll answer the question about uniqueness and talk about how to write an effective memoir. You won't want to miss this one. I look forward to seeing you then, and in the meantime, happy reading and writing. So You Want to Write a Book is part of the Candy Factory mini-series and is a proud member of the Candy Factory Collective.
Over the past 8 years, Suzette has been on a mission to help writers clear the fog and cut through the overwhelm so they can move their ideas out of their head and onto the page.
Visit yourstoryfinder.com to learn more about Suzette as well as her writing coach offerings.
So You Want to Write a Book is produced by the Candy Factory Collective for So Good Lancaster, another great project of the Candy Factory Co-working in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The show is produced by Ann Kirby with production support by Anna Tran and Jason Mundock. Administrative support by Ariana Henderson. Find out what makes Lancaster so good at sogoodlancaster.com. Candy Factory.
Collective.